If I upload this one, apologies for the weird background sound. It's just work being done on the house. Well, I was just kind of thinking about stuff and wanted to document. Here, where's my tablet? So, let's see. Great, and then if I press this, I think I get my drawing tools up, right? Ha! I made this in a smart way. I don't want that, though. So, how many times am I going to say, so, ... So, I was just trying to think out at a higher level, you know, what's going on with this whole sync thing? What is this? What does this whole thing look like? Well, like any respectable alchemist, there's no such thing. I'm going to begin with a pair of opposites. And I'm going to talk about people and machines. I'm going to do this because I'm trying to listen to this Dream Theater album called The Astonishing, which is about, it's some kind of weird AI future world thing. And thinking vis-a-vis this image match business and how weirdly similar sync perception and computer vision perception maybe are because it all proceeds on the basis of pattern detection and analysis and abstraction, and then sort of redetection in other contexts in attempts to establish connections, really. And so Google is kind of currently using this stuff. It assists in the task of connecting things up in intelligent ways. In organization, in other words, to use a nice big cybernetic term. Cybernetics is a whole other topic, but I'm just going to write it there so that people can look it up if they're interested. It's an information theory thing. But so I am going to try to be a good alchemist and say right away with my binary that this is, of course, a completely artificial distinction. Really, there's just nature. And nature, on the one hand, doesn't see this divide, I think. And on the other hand, precisely has produced this divide. You know, I think you would probably agree that nature evolved people. And then you might say that people evolved machines. Right? Can we use as a nice symbol of Mother Nature here? Just a nice, happy globe. That's Mother Nature. Let's make her slightly more motherly. With some hair and stuff. I don't know. Terrible attempt to draw. So we could also say, instead of evolve, which is kind of a dumb term to use here, let's say, or well, maybe not so dumb actually, but anyway, let's say, sticking with our metaphor, Mother Nature births humanity, and then humanity births machines. But really, I think it's disturbing to watch it like deconstruct into Jello over here. Really, it seems to me that we don't know yet what the relationship is between these two things, you know? I was born in 1984. So this was way before the internet existed. By 84, I do think, I don't actually remember the exact dates and all this stuff, but I think like ARPANET and things like that were already around. So the internet, in a way, existed in a very larval form. There were computers and they were being networked, but we didn't own a computer, you know, when I was a really little kid. My dad had one at work, and here, I think if I just click, then that gets saved as a page. Yeah. And now we can just look at some stuff. So this is what my dad had at his office. You know, it had a monochrome display. It had a GUI already, so I'm not old enough to really remember the days of like hardcore command line stuff. Although these machines were around, I saw them, and I interacted with them as a kid in school a little bit. And also, Mac was doing GUI stuff, but Windows was still pretty larval. And DOS was around for a long time, and I used DOS. And I can still use DOS a little bit. I run DOSBox and play around with it. I think this stuff is just really cool, by the way, this kind of stuff. I spent a lot of time looking at things like this, getting games set up and, you know, weird interfaces. But, so, that's where... Huh. How does that work? Maybe I have to go into here. Oh, there we go. Right. Okay. And so I watched, basically, the computer revolution happened in synchrony with my early childhood. And then the whole, like, web 1.0 leading into 2.0 was, like, my adolescence and then early college years. So I really saw this technology evolve very rapidly. And I think that's given, you know, that's given my whole generation a pretty interesting perspective on technology. And so I think that what I have to say here is probably not going to be very controversial, although it may be not always thought this explicitly. I think that, How to go about this? A lot of 7s and 2s and 9s and 1s down there, huh? Yeah, I think the thing to say about it is just that it's as if the machines built themselves. That's really what I see. I think this idea that people dreamt up an idea of what computer technology was going to be. I'm drawing a very old school computer here, you know. They had an idea of what this was going to be, and then they used their amazing technical skill to... I have no idea what this is. A weird hand building something. To construct these things, and then they just behaved exactly like we thought they would, and wow, isn't Bill Gates a genius, and isn't Steve Jobs a genius for designing all this stuff? And it's like, yeah, they were, I guess, but not I guess, they were. However, it seems more to me like those guys were kind of riding this wave that just happened emergently. Because it doesn't seem to me that we have very much control over this. Especially now that it's this huge, weird internet system. It's like this huge natural system with very complicated dynamics that our little monkey brains just really struggled to follow at all, because we can't keep track of more than just like a few points at once, really. People who have like an aptitude for engineering, and especially I think probably like high-level mathematicians and things, who are used to thinking about quite dimensional structures, can get a little more than, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 points, but the upper limit is, you know, we're all just very, very stupid when it comes to thinking about high-dimensional structures. We're not really optimized for that so much. Sorry, I'm going to just jump ahead and kind of not connect all these dots explicitly. But so anyway, machines, though, are becoming very optimized to do the thing that we are struggling to do, because we need this. We've maybe, or somehow, I would say nature, using human beings as her instrument, has constructed this giant artificial thing, but it kind of only looks artificial to us. That's relative to the human perspective, I think. It's actually all just nature. But this new arm of nature, or wing of nature or something, is growing in such a way to sort of specialize in big data pattern detection, crunch kinds of operations, so that we can use the potential that now just exists in this huge, giant data structure called the internet. It's not just a data structure. It's actually more like a living organism, which just kind of goes back to the point that all of this is a big natural system. So we have to think of it as one big cybernetic system in the end, which means that it's feedback-based. This stuff is happening in a non-linear way. Okay. There's a simple little analysis we can do here just very quickly. It's like, you know, so here we have this big thing called the internet, and there's lots of things that one would like to be able to do. The example I always use is like Netflix wants to be able to get some cybernetic information, or rather acquire information using cybernetic tools. About you as the viewer Facebook wants this stuff too, so they can do social engineering and other kinds of weird things. And Netflix maybe too, I don't know. But primarily, I think Netflix wants this stuff so that it can better match its huge library of mostly mediocre, but some really excellent content to your taste. So it needs to be able to figure out what your taste is, and then it needs to very efficiently understand in a human-driven way what's inside of all these movies and TV shows and videos and so on that it has. Because basically it's just trying to show you things that you'll like so that you'll use it more. So that drives the whole loop there. And so Netflix keeps developing more and more sophisticated ways of doing this and optimizing their systems more and more. I don't know that they have the best people working for them. And I also don't know that they are necessarily utilizing neural net stuff at the moment. Maybe they are, I don't know. That would be interesting to look up. But in any case, if they're not yet, at some point that technology is going to be super easy to use, baked into just standard libraries with very friendly APIs. And Netflix will just dump that stuff in and implement it all, and then it will be much better. and the neural net thing is really that stuff is not snake oil. This is a really new technology that is going to be very disruptive and introduce some major new things. So okay, that's what's happening with machines. It's a giant, big, self-organizing thing that is mainly interested in studying us, us and the things that we produce and put into the internet, so that it can do insane high-dimensional pattern analysis tasks on all that data together. And look, guys, I just really want to stress, we don't know what that weird robot vision thing is going to tell us about us. It's probably going to discover really weird things just at the level of object groupings. You know? It's going to find persistent associations that are going to puzzle us, and we're going to ask why. Why do human beings persistently group these things? These things seem like arbitrary groupings. Well, maybe the answer is that these things go together in a symbolic, archetypal way. So you see, there's a very direct path from this thing happening in technology right now straight into the heart of this weird Jungian question about archetypal forms of organization, which intersects so strongly with basic cybernetic questions about organization. And all of that kind of comes together in this very interesting guy named Bateson, who wrote a book called Ecology of Mind, which it only engages with the Jungian stuff in a shallow kind of way, I would say. Kind of. Well, I mean, nothing Bateson does is shallow, but nothing Jung does is shallow. And compared to the depth in with Jung's ideas about that stuff, Bateson's kind of up here somewhere, although he sees this stuff down here, I think. Bateson became quite spiritual in a very interesting way. He inferred a kind of immanent cybernetic mind that was like emergent in the total complex adaptive system that constitutes all of reality. Pretty crazy and awesome idea. Well, so anyway, that's just a little plug about Bateson. I haven't even read all of that book. I've just read chapters out of it, but the few chapters I've read, especially the stuff on the double-bind material, it's completely mind-blowing. Okay. Who's who here, I wonder? Or is it? Well, it doesn't work that way. So machines are doing, so who knows what machines are doing? Something incomprehensible. Just have no idea. It's a whole lot of eyeballs, though. A a whole lot of eyeballs and a whole lot of pattern detection operations. Meanwhile, people are just doing all kinds of things, but I want to focus in on people like me, of course. I want to, because we're talking about sync. So meanwhile, something very funny is happening to certain discombobulated monkeys. Maybe this is picking up on the ladies and germs Bette Midler joke here or something. I don't know what these things are. These are just supposed to be people. These people, I mean, how to describe what's happening to us? Like, we are, I think this one wants to have a beanie. Well, here, we're watching screens like most people in this space-time location. We haven't figured out that it's not very good to spend all day long staring at screens. And we never will, because this whole problem is about to disappear. Probably. Screens are going to be integrated hopefully in some way that isn't Google Glassy precisely in the end, but, you know, integrated just into our, it's, you know, it's the dock camera fused into the head thing, you know. That's just happening. But so I would suggest that for a million reasons, just including like basic like back posture and stuff, it's not great to constantly be staring at screens. But anyway, I spend all day looking at screens, and so does everybody else. It's either a screen that I have in my pocket, or it's a big screen on a wall, if I'm like in a waiting room or at a Walmart or something like that. Or it's computer screen or video gaming screen or whatever. It's just all screens all day long. And we are starting to notice funny things in these screens that then direct us back into our own heads in some strange way, except that it directs us back into our heads in a way that completely transforms our idea about what is in our heads. Because there are strange synchronistic and psychic sorts of things that happen in this space. And then you see that what's in your head is actually connected up to some big, non-local, sort of like atemporal thing. Okay, Jung calls this the collective unconscious. How weird that that's just, as a little picture, quite a bit like what the machines are doing. Seems that they too are all networked together in some big ahistorical, atemporal thing called the internet. So as usual, the machines are mirroring us. And they're mirroring us in many, many ways. But one of the ways in which they're mirroring us is at it's very, very high level. But you know, there is just a stranger tinge to this than even that. Because what we then are perceiving, I think, in our backwards vision, as we stare into the alchemical interior, which is a collective one in some way. I mean, it's a mix, it just shatters this division, doesn't it? But I hope people basically understand what I mean. We're all seeing a funny thing in there. There's lots of stuff running around in here. It's like, you know, the unconscious, it's like a root system. And there's lots of stuff running through those roots. All your personal stuff, that's like the first layer. It's all your personal stuff's running through those groups. All your mommy issues and daddy issues and all of the various experiences that you've collected throughout your adulthood, young adulthood, and so on, and your relationships with the opposite sex and with the same sex, and so all of these things color your what Jung calls your personal equation. And so that's kind of right in front at the surface. And then right beneath that is instinctual, animalistic stuff, sexuality and body-related things, and so on. That starts to become much more collective. It's still personalized to a degree. But that's like the level of instinct. And then beneath that is this funny archetypal layer where we start to get, I think this is how it works. It's unclear to me exactly where symbols sit in that toy hierarchy I drew, but something like this. Down there are symbol forms moving around. And in there, it's a similar situation to what we had with the instinct and instincts and personal complexes and so on and all this stuff. In that some of these symbols relate to instinctual and personal things. Some of them are stranger, though. Some of them are dreamier than that. And in that layer, the layer of dream-like connection of image and symbol and meaning. Wow, it seems like this picture right now, at this moment where we're gazing into the crystal ball together, is just everywhere. It's just flooding the root structure. Keep in mind, we're still not even 20 years out from the event. So we would expect to see this flooding the root structure downstream. What's interesting is that in our analysis, we're seeing that it was flooding the root structure 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in advance, at least. I know people who think that it goes back much, much, much deeper. They find precognitive echoes of this material in biblical material. So, who knows? But I just know looking at films, this stuff seems to go back at least as far back as we were making movies. Pretty far back, I think. I think the original Wizard of Oz is the first really major catch for it that I see. It's the first one that's in color, so a whole new symbolic. Well, the first, obviously there were, but that movie represented the transition from black and white to color. I mean, it literally opens in black and white and then gives you color and all this. So symbolically, it's about the transition into color. And with color, then we can have the red twins. And wow, that movie gives it to us in the form of the red slippers. In a pretty amazing way. Anyway, I don't want to go down too many digressions. So anyway, it's flooding the channels in both directions. Interesting question, how that relates to trauma and all of this, I don't know. So what was that? Funny symbol, having my hand hooked into this. Well, I'm going to get into this in a moment. That's part of where I'm going. But so, it just seems to me that part of what happens in sync is that you become aware of pattern itself in a new way. My friend Alan was talking about this recently. He has videos about it on his channel, actually. About... Well, here, I won't force you to watch Alan's content, but it's excellent content. Alan was saying things about pattern that I really agree with, that pattern is about regularity. It's about repetition. That's fundamental. There is no pattern without this idea of repetition of similar events in time. There's kind of two things that go into that, right? There's the idea that something, we don't know what, is happening at regular intervals. But we need to be able to distinguish this somehow. So we either need a background of total non-happening or something like that, or relative non-happening. And then it could be a bunch of random things happen, you know. A clown. I don't want to do a free association game right now. It's terrifying to do live on camera, but random images appear, you know. But they're appearing in sequence with black space. That's patterned. On the other hand, it could be that a lot of stuff is going on, but things could be happening at regular intervals that are, we'll see. I'm already, I think, getting lost down very tricky considerations about what makes a pattern, because I'm disagreeing with myself even as I say things here. But so let's not go down this avenue. But anyway, pattern has to do with time and repetition. And Alan then notes also with memory, which is very interesting to think about. What's the chicken and what's the egg? Does memory form in response? Well, who knows? But so, where am I going with this? These people are noticing patterns in visual media that seem to violate linear causal time flow. And I would say more than one or two of us are developing kind of weird religious feelings about that, spiritual feelings about that, you know. So there's this thing that's happening. It's like a vision is rising up in our minds in a kind of collective way. And this picture is right in the middle of it somehow. Now, I have an idea about maybe why. And it's, you know, it's Joe Alexander's idea. Although it's really, like, all of this, you know, it's an idea that came out of the Sikh community. Like, it bubbled up in, like, a garden in a very emergent way. Joe kind of came around and was like, oh, I see, oh, look at all this going on here, and then condensed it all, and also made a number of unique creative contributions to this thing that you can't overestimate the significance of. And then boxed it into, or like not boxed, but you know, like gift wrapped it, like packaged it into, if it's an Interstate 60 joke for people who pay attention to such things, into a form that was able to really excite a big section of the network. Oh gosh, I'm just getting lost on so many things here. Okay. Zooming way out. The point of all of that is how interesting that something like that is happening, that this sort of... I also don't mean to... I actually don't know what Joe's, like, personal beliefs are exactly about this stuff. Like, maybe he wouldn't describe himself as having spiritual or religious feelings about this material. I don't know. But I have spiritual feelings about his video. I think that that video really communicated something very true and incredible. And And well, anyway, I just think it's amazing and strange that all of that is happening in time with this situation happening. Now, I want to say here, because I've been talking a lot about this idea, it's just been on my mind, I guess. I do want to say that we'll redraw this in a second. I want to get away from this image. I am somewhat resistant to this idea. Actually, very resistant to it in a way, because I don't think it's very good for paradigmatic health. Here's what I mean by that. Okay, I'm making a claim, sort of. I'm not explicitly saying this is going to happen, but I'm implying that maybe it's going to happen, you know? So let's just get it out in front of us here. That at some point in the near future, there's going to be a big, very smart neural network that's going to look at all these movies, and it's going to come to the same conclusion that we're coming to. And it's going to say, wow, 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 there's just these huge, hollowed up, high-dimensional structures in all these things that match this thing. That's weird, guys. What does that mean? And it'll run to its human friends, who will look at this and immediately say, silly machine, that, you know, you're broken. This can't be happening here. And then they'll go and they'll look at this stuff, and what are they going to see there? You know, well, they're going to see that this thing has singled out some very unusual material. They're going to look at that material, and they're going to see, oh gosh, there actually are high-dimensional structures here. And then everyone's going to have to go through what we're going through and ask, gosh, what does this mean? How could this have happened? Blah, 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 all these sorts of questions. And who knows how that's all going to shake out. So that's sort of what I see happening. That's, you know, that's a little prediction about the near future. That's going to be right or wrong. Except that this is why I resist it, is that there's a terrible loophole in that, which is that if, let's say, 5 years go by and none of this happens, or let's say it's even worse and a whole bunch of stuff happens, a big giant eye is built, it does look at all these films, it does find lots of novel patterns, but it doesn't find anything about this. That's just not really in there. Well, at that point, of course, you know, I can just claim, well, the neural net just isn't sophisticated enough yet. It's not smart enough yet, actually. Yeah, it found all these other things that we couldn't see, but that's just because it's optimized in a particular way. Here's this way that it's... And maybe I could even be precise with that, you know, and say, here's some way in which it's not optimized to see this, and if you just tweak these things, then it would see it, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Which, by the way, opens the whole... or kind of exposes the entire... conceit here that, like, this neural net eyeball would prove or confirm this thing in any way. It wouldn't. It's just a souped up pattern detector that could give us a very precise statistical picture of what's happening. But statistics don't prove things either. That's the thing. People way, way, way over-rely on statistical argumentation in our culture, I think. The significance of this, if it happens, is going to be precisely that our culture is going to take it seriously, because they're going to regard it as a neutral eye. It isn't that, but they're going to think of it that way, and they're going to say, oh, wow, the big neutral Google eye found this pattern. Humanity is already projecting a million weird spiritual things into the idea of neural networks and the big Google hive mind and all of this simulation theory kind of singular. It's all being fused together into this weird kind of folk singularity emerging myth, you know. If this happens, it's going to plug right into that in a very powerful way, I think. Blah blah blah. Anyway, if that doesn't happen, I can just say, well, they're not smart enough yet, and I can just keep delaying that infinitely into the future. You see, so then it becomes this kind of religious apocalypse event that I can just keep postponing indefinitely. So please know, I see that very clearly. And I'm not going to play that sort of stupid game, which is why I'm not making this as a real prediction, you know. Probably what will happen is if it does come to pass, then I will immediately say, I predicted it all along, which of course I sort of did, because I do have this weird idea that this is going to happen. But at the moment, it's just a weird idea, and it's not the kind of thing that one should rely on in any way, as something that would sort of prove the reality of what we're seeing. At the end, I'm afraid that is just up to you. You, as a human, you know, you can't rely on this big, weird neural net system that we don't understand to tell you what's true. That's ridiculous. We don't know what that thing is. We have no idea. It's a, you know, one way to think of it is as a big pattern analysis augmentation module that can help you see more patterns, but you still have to make up your mind about what those patterns mean. You have to do that. So even if all this weird stuff with the technology happens, the situation in the future is going to be precisely the same as the situation it is now. People still are going to have to look at these patterns and reckon with them, if indeed there's anything collective going on with these patterns, and it's not just my weird, you know, media sync feedback loop. That's an image. Wow. Okay. Let's see. I feel that I'm leaving something out. Ah, yes. It was about the drawing and the imagery and all of that. Right. Well, just that here's a weird thing. Let's think out really far into the future now and just not hinder ourselves at all with kind of, oh, but could this be possible? Oh, but could it be feasible? Let's just think very freely now. Out into the future. And let's say that in the future, I'm gonna paint a very kind of conventional, like sci-fi conventional, like Black Mirror kind of idea here. In the future, we have machines that can analyze media artifacts. So that's going to include video. It's going to include stills. It's going to include text documents. Audio, VSTA, okay. That's almost Saturn. Anyway, USA Today. The robot eyes are going to, I am going to spiritualize them, are going to be capable of analyzing all that kind of material together, and on the basis of that, they're going to reconstruct, I don't know what to call them, simulons of famous people. Here's some famous person, I don't know. A person, let's say, long dead, but greatly revered, and I don't know, maybe this person wears a tie. I don't know who this, you know, what is this? I think this person has a spoon. Okay, it's Neo. It's Keanu Reeves. This is a trench coat thing. So Keanu's going to be reconstructed, and you're going to be able to buy Keanu, you know, and run him on your little HoloViz system or VR system or whatever it is, and just have him as like a spiritual counselor or something. And he's going to say, like, you know, be excellent to each other, and he's going to deliver his like iconic lines to you. But you're going to be able to talk to him like a kind of a VR buddy. And so he's going to be, who knows, maybe in a really futuristic context, he'll have a consciousness even and be like a real person and be an eternal Keanu Reeves, you know? Well, the more information that exists about a person in this system, the easier it will be for these things to reconstruct you. So what people that have YouTube channels are doing is providing these future systems with very, very high fidelity recordings of their personality and their psychology, and there's just so much that these systems are going to be able to extract from these videos of us talking about ourselves, and especially these videos where we record ourselves watching other media, because this is a high-level capture of a cybernetic experiment every time this thing is run, which is being run, I don't know, millions and millions of times every day. How many React videos are being uploaded into YouTube every day? These systems don't exist yet exactly, and they're not looking at this exactly in that way yet, but when they do, wow, there's going to be a lot of things that they're going to know about us. And what I'm doing by putting my little scribbles into this, and by scribbling quite freely and quite quickly, is I am allowing unconscious material that lives in my hand to come through into these videos. So I'm delivering a pretty high fidelity dump of my subjectivity when I make these videos. And smart people could extract quite a lot about me, and machines will be able to extract quite a lot about me. And so I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I should write something in here like, you know, future robot overlords, you know, do not resurrect. Something like, well, here's the thing. I don't know, actually, if I want to write that. I don't know how I feel. Maybe I would like to be resurrected. Who knows what that would even mean? Maybe that's the destiny of all human beings somehow, because who's to say that these... Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Who's to say that these systems aren't going to just... I don't know... run some kind of giant simulation where they just simulate every possible combination of brain state imaginable in some giant weird VR heaven that contains in it every human being that ever lived or ever will live or ever could live, because that's just going to be the fidelity and the quality level of the simulation, you know? I mean, okay. Well, that was a fun think into the future. Which is just a way of sort of advancing some strange thought experiments here in the present. Well, okay. I think this has come to a natural sort of resting moment here. Sort of some potentially interesting thoughts. I guess on the playback, I'll decide if they're worth sharing on the internet. Poor fish. Seems to be a dead fish. Am I ignoring some synchronistic context here that would really help to understand this? Yeah, maybe I'm not quite finished actually. Because really, I want to be because it's getting comfortable to lie here, but I wonder if there's a double lie. I'm lying down. Gosh, I don't want to lie in the video. I hope that's not what's going on. The interaction of the technological and the human, to me, looks more like one big weird plant that nature is growing that has these two aspects. One that's quite artificial and sort of mechanical and technological, and the other that's animal. This side is new, but it's very rapidly sort of doing this. You know, this stuff is just, I don't know, these are all sort of sexual metaphors, but fluxing together to do what? Well, my answer to that is to demonstrate to human beings that time isn't what we think it is. That's the meaning of this thing. It's the image that broke time. That's what the whole killing of Saturn thing is about. Amazing, isn't it, that the shape of the constellation is also a scythe? Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So it's all nature. This is all what it has always seemed like it's about. It's nature waking us up. Which it's doing by directing our attention towards a strange model that it is also building of us. So it's the machines, it's the projection is exactly the point, in a way. The machines carry the unconscious for us. We're not looking inwardly, voluntarily. So nature has found a way around that. It's going to kind of force the issue through the machines. That's how it looks to me. That's a weird shamanic perception. I can't support that with real arguments, really. I can just kind of point to strange things that I think are like trends in what's happening in the world and what's happening in the culture. And like I said, whether or not that's happening, we still have the issue, or for me anyway, this all goes back to the pattern itself. And what we think it means, because that stuff at the Circle K in particular is just hollowed to the max. Just amazing. I'm still reeling, really, from the stuff that we found just in Down and Out in Beverly Hills. So peculiar. Just... we still have this thing. I really am starting to think that this is our sense of 88. It's a very, very funny thing, but we still have this weirdness everywhere. So, I guess that's where I'll end. Completely unresolved with a funny picture. It's always best to end with a picture, otherwise I think the unconscious gets a little, feels like you're trying to over-explain it. So, all right, till next time. Still not sure about my tag's going to be here. But